Hey there, Cats and Kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Episode 5 of the anime series Hitsugi no Chaika Avenging Battle. And this episode was all kinds of badass, following on from the cliffhanger, which saw all of our heroes, all of the characters, taken into custody, and, or in the case of the Chaikas, about to be dissected by this very malevolent guy, Ismash, the associate director, whatever it is, of the Institute of Magic. He wants to dissect their brains and find out what led them here and what powers they yield and everything like that. And of course, this whole episode, the way it basically unfolded, felt to me very much akin to times I'd be playing old Final Fantasy RPGs, when you would get to that final disc and you'd be getting to that final boss battle, and you've got all your teams. You've built up all the characters in the game, and all of them have their little respective groups that they have to go, left, right, and center separately to then come together later to face this final boss. That's very much what this episode felt like to me, because of course you see the Chaikas working together in tandem, kind of loosely having an agreement between themselves. Until they escape, they will no longer, fight each other. And so they work in tandem, and of course the Chaika proper ends up saving this girl, this entity, if you will, that's a grand mystery. Neva Lada, we find out, is her name in this episode, and we find out exactly what she amounts to. There's this point where once she's freed, very strangely, she comes over to Chaika and she basically puts her mouth on her finger, and you're kind of like, okay. And she says something about activating, and we're not sure what that means until, of course, this trio of groups, if you will, comes together finally, because you also had Akari and Frederica, making the rounds. They stumble across Red Chaika's brood, and they help them escape. Then they stumble across Cyril and Ursula, the last of their kind, as we find out in this episode. These demi-humans that I basically said in the previous episode discussion, that I really kind of felt it was hinted at they were going to be sympathetic characters, and that absolutely played out to be true. So all of these characters, separate though they may be, Toru, of course, on his own and everything like that, are eventually going to come together, and, Smash is already running rampant, getting all the demi-human horde and, soldiers and stuff to look for the escapees. But then when he realizes that Neva Lada has actually been taken, in tow with the Chaikas, all havoc breaks loose, because he basically goes to this tower, this central tower in the entirety of this island, which it turns out is a gigantic, gundo, essentially the weapon of choice for Chaika proper. And it's fascinating that the magic this thing maintains, basically keeps all of the creatures, the Phala, the Orthros, and all that kind of stuff, even unicorns, these bastardized monsters that are being mass-produced within this island, within the facility. This is how they control them, and this is how they can manipulate them to ward off enemies, or, take control of enemies and everything like that. And so this guy goes right into this sucker and starts utilizing it. And so basically they realize, per the words of Cyril and Ursula, that this is their focus. This needs to be what they're going to take out. Chaika very admirably tries to use her normal-sized gundo to do so, but it makes no impact. This thing has defenses, magic defenses, and barriers. So they're getting nowhere, essentially. And, of course, I loved that whole sequence where they're all just working in tandem. There's a little quip between Red Chaika's partner, David, to Toru, who's like, don't stab me in the back while we're fighting here. And Toru's like, yeah, same to you, pal. So they're keeping up their agreement for now, temporarily working in tandem, working with each other, and trying to trust each other long enough to survive, hopefully finding a way off this island. And then we finally have this reveal of what Neva Lada is. She, in turn, is like this AI, or this super being, if you will, that we find out from Ismash's words, sort of talking to himself. He put all his effort into taking elements, genetic elements, out of all of the Phala, all of the creatures, the magical manipulation they've been doing within this facility, and somehow through, some creative process, Neva Lada was created, and this was an arrangement passed down by, of course, Arthur Gaz himself. So could this be the fortune? Could this fortune be Nivalata herself, which turns out to be, I don't know if she can take multiple forms or not, but she's kind of like the most sophisticated Gundo ever, and the biggest, baddest one in the world, which she transforms. She kind of, realizing Chaika is desperate to take down this tower and cut down the magic that's controlling the creatures attacking them, she taps into that weaponization, and she basically transforms and adds herself to Chaika's established Gundo and becomes this huge, hulking cannon Gundo that's like just phenomenal. And when she finally fires, the ball of energy just rips across the space, between where Chaika is positioned and this tower. And this tower is taken down with one hit. The entirety of this thing is basically demolished and disintegrated to the stub. The guy, Ismash, is basically crushed by some of the remnants of the walls, and he himself finally has that moment of realization just before he expires. This is what Arthur Gaz wanted. He wanted the most powerful, malevolent weapon in the world. And knowing that, what was hinted at in the previous episode with, of course, Gillette's faction, his former faction, now led by Nikolai, as I've said, who have essentially been in this episode, as we find out, ordered to go to the Principality of Hartgen and, investigate. But in the last episode, they found out that as of 90 years ago, this grand mystery of how did Arthur Gaz have what appeared to be floating fortresses that many years ago and everything like that. And so apparently Arthur Gaz was this very malevolent monarch who just wanted to have as much weaponry and the absolute peak, most threatening and ominous of all possible weaponry. We're talking like weapons of mass destruction here. He wanted to be the only one in control of them to, I guess, keep, the entirety of the world's populace under boot heel, that kind of situation. And this idea that, there is a grand destiny unfolding and this grand wealth, this basically rumored inheritance of Arthur Gaz's, this must be Nivalata. She must be the pinnacle of weaponry that could perhaps be utilized to, take the world and enslave it. And there's that very ominous point toward the end of the episode where Chaika is just still reeling from all these revelations, the lies of her not really being Arthur Gaz's daughter, finding out the truth that all these orphan girls had been manipulated and transformed and given false memories, and trying to find this fortune of his, and running into Nivalata instead, and all this kind of stuff. There's this point where she's just overwhelmed, and they're sitting on a beachhead, and essentially, they've sent Red Chaika and her team pack, and they've agreed to run into each other at a later time. They're going to kind of go their separate ways and not fight for the moment after everything they just endured. And of course, Cyril and Ursula, they're going to stay on that island, that little mysterious magic barrier encased island, which is probably no longer encased within that magic because they destroyed the tower that was keeping it, hidden. But you see that Akari has asked, is Chaika okay? And Toru has gone to talk to her. And he basically tells her, we don't have to resume our journey right this minute to find the remains of Arthur Gaz as we've been doing. We can actually let our hair down for a little bit, and you can think about this. You can let this sink in. You can try to decide what you want to do as far as what is the next step. Do you even want to find more of Arthur Gaz's remains? And then you have Nivalata, who's sitting there right beside Chaika, and she's like, you will find Arthur Gaz's remains. I've been waiting for you, Chaika, and just the cold precision with which she utters this. It's not merely a statement of, well, that's what I'm expecting to have happen, maybe, sort of, let's see. It's, you're going to do this. You're going to carry out this mission, no matter what. It doesn't matter what you want. Very, very ominous, in tone were those words. Because, of course, we also have that sort of brief little mention just before the end of the episode with the round table of sort of governmental, cronies, if you will, who are aware of Arthur Gaz's remains and the Chaikas being in pursuit of them. And they're talking about this grand martial arts sort of exhibit type thing that's going to be happening, or challenge that's going to be happening, where essentially fighters around the world are going to be competing to see who the strongest is, and then of course the winner will apparently gain themselves some relics from Arthur Gaz, his remains. And yeah, just highly anticipating to see where the story goes from here. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you've seen episode 5 of Hitsugi no Chaika Avenging Battle, what you thought of it. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video and that it finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.